What is going on, Niner fans? How we feeling? It is a Wednesday afternoon. There's some news. We're going to talk about it. Things we always do. It's the off season, so there's not a lot of news going around, but there's some news today, and we're going to discuss what was going on. The big news of the day for the NFL, of course, was the salary cap increase, and everybody's hyped up because more money for teams to spend. I love it. We're going to talk about it. So I want to know how you guys are doing today. Hope everybody's having a good little Wednesday here. It's a nice day in the Bay. No complaints on my end. I'm doing well, and I hope everybody else is too. My man, 49ers Media, what's good? What's up, Danny? He says, what's up, Raj and Faithful? Debtopia, what's good? Renee, hello. Steven says, what's good? How are you doing? I'm doing well. Ryan says, hey, Raj, my puppy Luca says hi. Well, say hi to Luca. Like Luca Doncic, your puppy. Is it Luca Doncic, the puppy? That's pretty dope, man. Say what's up to Luca. My man Media says, interesting. We could be selling part of the team. We're going to talk about that too. So a little bit of news to get here. I like when there's actual decent news to talk about, because otherwise you're just, making up stuff. So let's get to the big story of the day. As you know, the 49ers, along with everybody else in the NFL, are getting a little bit of a boost in their salary cap. I shouldn't say a little bit. It's a pretty substantial amount of salary cap increase. So the NFL informed teams that the 2025 per team salary cap will fall in the range of $277.5 million to $281.5 million. So it's going to be within $270 to $280 million. It's up from last year's $255.4 million salary cap. That's crazy. In 2 years, the salary cap will have increased more than $53 million. In 2 years, the last two seasons, an increase of $53 million. Players are making more money. The NFL is making more money. And now they get to pay their players, obviously the more money. And it's more lucrative. Teams are making the money. You got to pay these guys. And that means, these players' contracts are going up and up and up. We saw it, right, with Brandon Ayuk's contract last year. We've seen it with Nick Bosa. I mean, hell, Fred Warner, George Kittle, Brock Purdy's expected to get a big contract. The 49ers, they even paid Christian McCaffrey big-time money, right? And he's the highest-paid running back, until this year's contract. So it's crazy, man. The Niners go along with the salary cap. The increase shows that the 49ers can go and spend money. And I think it's a good thing because there's a lot of players that the 49ers want to be able to sign potentially in free agency. And not only that, there's also players that they have to bring back on their roster, right? George Kittle needs an extension. Brock Purdy, he's going to get his extension. Dre Greenlaw, will he be back? This probably gives him a little bit more money to play with to put him into the roster. And yesterday, Matt Maiocco was talking about how the 49ers want to try to maybe budget Talanoa Hufanga in potentially, and this would allow them to maybe get a little bit more money to be able to sign a guy like Talanoa Hufanga. So we'll see. It's a good news for around the league. If you love football, if you want your star players to be able to stay on your team due to the salary cap, this is good because there's more money involved, and that's a great thing. And I think this right now kind of puts Brock Purdy's contract now at that next level. Like, okay, you got some more money to spend. The new league year's coming up. Let's go figure it out. Let's go take it care of. Let's get it taken care of. I really think Brock Purdy's contract is going to get ironed out here pretty quick. I don't think they're going to make us wait. I know next week is the combine, and I'm sure that everybody's going to ask John Lynch what the heck's going on with the Brock Purdy contract. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the top question of training camp. So I'm excited for that one. Let's see a couple of these questions. Interesting. We could be selling. What's up? Listening while working. What's good, Rick G? Hopefully you don't get in too much trouble listening while you're working. My man says named after Luka Doncic. Then he was traded to the Lakers, which was a bummer. Oh man, yeah. My man says now I love Debo, but F his production. I think Debo, obviously his production has slipped. He got paid a lot of money, and I think we've talked about this many times. It's best for both parties to move on. We know Debo needs a fresh start. The 49ers need a fresh start at wide receiver from Debo. I think it's best for both that they move on. And yeah, his production has probably pissed everybody off in the Niner community. And you know what? Maybe he's just not hungry. He might be hungry in one way, but he's not hungry on the field, if you know what I mean. Because apparently he's definitely hungry, right? He's put on some pounds, according to a lot of people. But all jokes aside, maybe he just lost that hunger in the Niner, locker room, and maybe he just needs to go to another team so he can prove himself, and that's what it is. So it is what it is. Debo is most likely gone, but again, now the 49ers with a little bit more cap space, they potentially could go get a veteran receiver, which I think they're going to do. Now, I don't know if they'll be able to trade for a Garrett Wilson, which is like my dream offseason, trade for the 49ers. If they can go and make a trade Debo to the Jets and maybe a draft pick and go get Garrett Wilson, that'd be fantastic. I don't know if that's going to be realistic. They can go and get a veteran. There's a lot of veterans on the market this year, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper. Now, I'm not going to say they're going to go and make your roster Super Bowl, caliber, but they're good players. I know they're a little bit past their prime. Some would say they're washed up, but they're still good players, and you need to get a veteran, and a guy that's going to be out there that's healthy, producing, because Brandon Ayuk's going to miss some time, Ricky Pearsall, we can't just throw everything on him on, day one because he's the next guy up. You got to kind of temper your expectations with that. If you put too much pressure on a young guy, sometimes they don't succeed. Now, I think he will be good, but I don't want to throw everything at him. So they will probably go after a veteran, and I think the new salary cap allows them to do that. I think this is going to be good. I think, again, you're going to have a big increase in salary cap space. Go get a veteran. You can drop $10 million on a veteran receiver now. I think this really opens that up. So we'll see. Now, the news, though, for the 49ers is obviously they got more salary cap, but how much salary cap space do they have? So according to Over the Cap right now, the 49ers are going to have about $50.6 million in salary cap space. And if you compare this to the NFC teams, they're about the sixth most salary cap in the NFC, not the NFL, but the NFC. So they're sitting pretty good. The Commanders have $82.2 million this year in salary cap. They're going to have another big offseason. They can go sign a lot of people. So Washington's going to continue to get better. The Cardinals, they have $76.5 million. The Bears with the new coach, they have $69 million. Nice. The Vikings, $63.3 million to spend and make that team better. They were a good team last year. They can only get better. The Lions, they have $51.9 million, slightly ahead of the Niners. So the Lions could potentially get better. Obviously, like I said, the Niners have $50.6 million in salary cap space. I'm sure Brock Purdy is going to take a big chunk of that cap space here and there. Brock Purdy, of course, he's most likely going to get a contract, like I said, sooner rather than later. Then you have the Green Bay Packers, $49.1 million, and then you have the Giants. They have $48.4 million. But are they going to be a team? Obviously, they're going to want to spend a lot of money, but will teams want to go to the New York Giants? Football Giants, I don't know. They have a lot of money, but I don't know if teams will want to go chase the bag to go play in a bad team like the Giants. The Rams, they have $44.4 million. So those are your top 8 teams in terms of NFC cap space. The 49ers are going to have to compete to get, players this offseason in free agency. And then it kind of falls off from $44 million where the Rams are. The Panthers are the next closest teams. They'll have $24.8 million in cap space. Now, they don't have a lot of money tied up to players, so they could probably spend some money on some little, on some free agents here and there. And, they're a team that's rebuilding, but they have a good young quarterback who really found his way last year. I was happy for Bryce Young, and maybe the Panthers can upgrade enough to win the NFC South. The NFC South's not strong, so I feel like the Panthers might be able to spend some money and improve their roster to compete in the NFC South. The Eagles, $19.5 million in cap space. Team's pretty loaded. I don't know if they're going to have to go crazy in the free agency, but they got some money to spend. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers only have $8.4 million. I don't know if they're going to be able to improve. And the Dallas Cowboys, look at this. They have $2.5 million in cap space. I mean, they're paying CeeDee Lamb. They have to pay Parsons. I don't know if they're going to have the money to pay him. You got Dak Prescott, who got an assload contract, $60 million. And that right there is the fear of 49er fans. Look what the Cowboys, right? They went and signed Dak Prescott to the $60 million annually contract. That's crazy money. And now their cap space right now, because they had to pay that big money, is $2.5 million coming into the season. So I feel like Niner fans are scared that, okay, if you give Brock Purdy the $60 million in a year or two, their cap space is going to look like the Cowboys, which is no cap space. But the one thing that the 49ers have other than the Cowboys is a great, front office where they can fix the numbers. Parag Marathe, how he, backloads contracts, he restructures deals. So I'm not too worried about it because he always finds a way. I mean, look at this. We have Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, all these guys highly paid, Trent Williams, et cetera, et cetera. And look, they have $50 million in cap space. So I know it's going to cost a lot to keep Brock Purdy on this roster, and you have to give George Kittle his money. But look, with all those high-paid contracts, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, all these contracts, you got $50.6 million in cap space, the sixth most in the NFC. Niners know what they're doing in terms of cap space. So I'm a little optimistic compared to other teams. So we'll see how it goes this offseason. I'm so hyped up, man. We got a couple of weeks until free agency, and I really think the Niners are going to make a little bit of a splash. I don't think they're going to go crazy. You get an offensive lineman, maybe a center, maybe a good defensive lineman or a cornerback, and then you just wait till the draft. I really think the 49ers are going to make some big moves. Will they make trades? I don't know. I hope they do, and bring in a guy like Garrett Wilson and, shock the world. Will they get Myles Garrett? Probably not. But I hope this extra cap space maybe gives them a little push to do it. I really would love to see the 49ers go and just make an absolute home run splash. Can you imagine? I know a lot of people don't think it's going to happen. I know Matt Miyoko says it is not likely. A lot of people said that about a lot of things over the last few years. You just never, ever know. The Niners were able to go and make a splash and go get Myles Garrett. I mean, come on, man. But to the point of a guy like Matt Miyoko, who said yesterday he doesn't see it, because if you sign a guy like Myles Garrett on your roster, you're probably going to have to extend him and make him the highest paid defensive player. You already just paid Nick Bosa, that money. So if you're paying two players in the Nick and Bosa salary range, and then now you have to pay your quarterback $50 to $60 million, it just financially doesn't make sense. I don't know how you do it. And again, if you're paying Brock Purdy that much money, you're probably not going to be able to afford a guy like Myles Garrett. So it's tough, man. It is nice to see that they got more salary cap, but how much more will it help bring players in? It'll be determined in the next couple of weeks. So Rob says, let's take a look at this. He says, I heard, my man Bloomin' Cash says free agent Drew Dahlman, any vet wide receiver. Adams would be awesome. Yeah, Drew Dahlman, that's the guy I think every Niner fan wants at center. Drew Dahlman would be a massive upgrade over Jake the Snake Brendel. My man Rob D, look at it. He got the old 49ers logo on his PFP. I love it. He says, I heard you were buying that 10% of the 49ers. Let's talk about that. So maybe, per a source, I might be buying the 49ers. And if I do, the first thing I do with my 10% share of the 49ers is cut Jake Moody. If I own this team, if I had any stake in this team, I'd say, Jake Ski, you got on. I'd call up Jake. I got the contract signed. I got 10% order. Can I make one transaction this year? You're allowing me to have one transaction this year. Okay, this is what I want. I'm gonna call him. I'm gonna call him up. Okay, what's his? Give me the number. Oh, yeah. Okay. His Michigan area code still. Why would you not change it? Okay. Yeah, Jake Moody. This is Raj Malwani. You don't know me. I'm the new 10% stakeholder of the San Francisco 49ers. Yeah, I am. San Francisco 49ers. I don't care if you know me or not. You're gone. You're fired. Have a great day. Pack your bags. I need you in the locker room. Get everything out of there. Clean it out. Make sure you to leave nothing behind. I don't want to smell your scent. I don't want to hear anything about you. I don't want to see anything left behind on Jake Moody. You're gone from my team. You're gone. Bye. That's what I would do if I had 10% stake on the 49ers. I definitely would. So hopefully I can buy it. But all jokes aside, 49er fans, as you know, today it was reported from Pro Football Talk that the 49ers are exploring the sale of a 10% stake in the team. The offering would be based on a valuation of more than $9 billion. That would put the price of 10% at more than $900 million. Per the report, it's unclear whether the 49ers will sell to one of the improved private equity funds, to one or more, to one or more individuals. For now, its internal deliberations are ongoing. It's not a sure thing that any sale will be made, but the talks are definitely ongoing. The $9 billion valuation would be a record. That's a lot of money. $9 billion, ladies and gentlemen. Woo! That's a lot of money. Niners would sell 10% stake of their team and make $9 billion from that. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it. What does that mean for the Niners? We don't know yet. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of investors that would love to buy. Maybe that 10% would allow them to make changes to the state. Who even knows what that 10% will allow that shareholder to do? Maybe this just, who knows? Who knows at this point? Right now, we all know that the Yorks, Edward DeBartolo Sr. bought the entire team for only $13 million. This is crazy. He bought the team for $13 million from the wives of team founders Tony and Victor Morabito, right? And now, of course, the DeBartolo family still owns the team with the son Jed York as the CEO. So I don't know. Right now, they're solely owned by the York family. They're sole owners. Maybe they want to spread their wings and get some other investors in there. Who knows? Well, who knows what's going to happen if they do sell it, right? We don't know what the ramifications are going to be because it's just ongoing talks. We can't speculate. We don't know. But can you imagine $9 billion growth of income based on when they bought it for $13 million. This is a lot. But back when they bought it, it was huge amount. But now $13 million is not as much as it was back then. And they would make $9 billion profit from that. Crazy, unbelievable. So we'll see who's buying it. Who's going to buy it? I don't know. Tom Brady. I bet you Tom Brady is pissed off because he probably would have bought that 10% stake in the 49ers. Can you imagine Tom Brady, part owner of the Niners? Be amazing. Let's see. Cut Brendel. Oh, yeah, I would cut Brendel if I was the owner. My man Throwback says Roger would be a great owner. He would have had this team have another fight. Yeah, I'd at least have one champ. I feel like I could at least have one championship if I was the owner. Like I'm not saying it's easy to be an NFL owner, but I really feel like if I was the owner of this damn team, I'd have at least one championship to show for it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's just common sense. Like you cut Jake Moody, like you get rid of the guy, Jake Brendel. Get rid of the Jakes, man. Get rid of those guys. Jake on the Niners does not bode well. I would get rid of those guys. I would probably stop drafting Michigan guys. Now, I love Will Johnson, cornerback from Michigan, but based on the 49ers last couple of years drafting Michigan players, I probably would stay away from them. I know 49ers media said this the other day, and I was thinking about it yesterday. I was like, Will Johnson's a great talent, and I'm sure he will be a good NFL cornerback, just not for the 49ers. I feel like there's a curse with the 49ers drafting Michigan players. Ronnie Bell, Jake Moody. Who else was a Michigan guy that the 49ers Ambry Thomas, for Christ's sakes. Like those guys were not good for the 49ers. So I would probably shy away from getting a Michigan guy. I don't know. Whoever bought the duct tape banana. Did you guys ever see that? The duct tape banana is in an art museum? How much does that thing sell for? Like millions of dollars. Whoever bought that's probably buying 10% of the 49ers. Yeah, let's talk about George Kittle. He was on USA Today. He had an interview, and he said a lot of stuff. George Kittle said a lot of stuff. So the first thing he said was about Debo, where he's sad. He doesn't want to see Debo replaced. We'll talk about that. But there was another quote. He says, I think we're going to get the best version of Christian McCaffrey. He says Christian McCaffrey's coming into next season angry. And I hope to God we get the best version of Christian McCaffrey. If we get a better version than we had 2 years ago, holy crap, this team's going to be unbelievable because Christian McCaffrey was the missing piece this year. Absolutely. We all know he was the missing piece this year. And I'm so excited to get Christian McCaffrey back. But with Kittle, of course, he's going to hype up his players, and that's what they do. But I really think the vibe around, Christian McCaffrey is, man, he is so hungry. He's ready to come back and just be better than ever. He said it too, his farewell post last year when he had to leave for the season and be, when he was placed on the injury reserve for the rest of the season, he said it. He goes, I'm going to come back hungry. I'm going to become stronger. I'm going to be better. I'm going to train harder. Like for a guy to say that, who is probably the hardest working player in the NFL, it's like, damn, man, this guy really wants it. And I'm so excited for Christian McCaffrey. Now, he does have an injury risk like everybody does, but his is probably a little heightened than others because of the position he plays. But, man, I would love to see Christian McCaffrey return to at least like 80% of what he did 2 years ago. That would be amazing. But if he can come back and be the full form of Christian McCaffrey, man, I think Niner fans are going to be absolutely just hyped up to see it. So, we'll see. I'll really I love Christian McCaffrey. He was one of the major reasons why this team was good. And I feel like the loss of Christian McCaffrey really it's just spread around the whole team. You didn't have Brock Purdy. I know he had a down season, but I feel a lot of it was tied to Chris McCaffrey. People trash on Brock Purdy. They say the O-line was bad, which it was, but you took away his best weapon on the offense. Christian McCaffrey was an MVP candidate. You took that away from the roster. I don't think people give that enough validation, because yes, we lost Brandon Ayuk. Yes, the O-line was not good. There were other issues, and yes, Brock Purdy, regressed this year, but I feel a lot of it was tied to Christian McCaffrey. People don't talk about that enough. It's like, oh yeah, well, Brock Purdy sucked. The teams figured him out. I think if you had Christian McCaffrey for that season, we probably would have won more than 6 games. I think Brock Purdy's stats would have been a lot better. So even with the O-line they had last year, because the O-line was the same the year before, and Christian McCaffrey changes so much. He even kind of made Jimmy Garoppolo look decent a couple of years back. Remember Jimmy was in there slinging that? We had CMC. It was like, wow, what the hell? What's going on with Jimmy G? Christian McCaffrey makes the team around him better. He was the MVP that season. I couldn't believe he didn't win it. Just like, I'm going to compare him to Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley was such a revelation for the Eagles. I hate the Eagles, but they were smart. They brought in the best running back in the NFC to their roster, and he changed them. I know their defense was a big part of their change this year. I know they have a great offensive line, but they went from a decent team on offense to a juggernaut on offense, because you had the threat of Saquon Barkley running all over teams. And he had 2,000 yards rushing. I know he had a great O-line, but he still was a damn beast. He's a beast in New York. New York gave up on him, chip on his shoulder, and he played his ass off. And that really changed Jalen Hurts' abilities. And just like Christian McCaffrey, he helped out Brock Purdy in his ability to open up the offensive playbook. And I honestly thought Saquon Barkley should have been MVP this year. I'm not a Eagle fan. I'm a realist, though. And I'm going to say there that Saquon Barkley probably should have won MVP this year. If you're really being honest with who's the most valuable person to their team, you take Saquon Barkley off that Eagles offense, they don't win the Super Bowl. They don't get to the playoffs. So that's my take. And I think Christian McCaffrey had the same impact on the Niners that Saquon Barkley had on the Eagles this past season. So yeah, George Kittle, good stuff from him there. Let me see. There was a couple more quotes from George Kittle. Let me pull all these up. I think it's from around the NFL. Let me pull up this. Around the NFL. Here it is. Okay, Around the NFL had this, had all this stuff here. I'm going to click on their article and we'll talk about this, because this was good stuff too from George Kittle. He said a lot. Let me find this article. Bear with me here. Yeah, so he says that Christian McCaffrey is going to be an angry Christian McCaffrey. Okay, so George Kittle will be very sad if or when Deebo Samuel is traded. He says, we're just going to have to build our offense a little bit differently because we don't have that available for us. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, well, Deebo's fallen off. But this is what he says. He says you can't really replace Deebo Samuel as the trade is looming. He says, he says he's realized now it's time for the organization to be honest with themselves about how they might proceed. It's a process that begins with acknowledgement of reality, player value, schematic fit, and replacement candidates. So he says, George Kittle says, you can't really replace Deebo Samuel. He says, I think he's one of the most unique players in the NFL because of what he can do. Well, one of the greatest, best yak guys besides myself. He said, I'll hype myself up. I'm pretty good at that too. But he's so good when he gets the ball in his hands. The fact that you can line him up in the slot, out wide, in the backfield, and do all that fun stuff with him, and he breaks tackles, and he runs like a running back, and he has the burst, he has the speed, he has the agility to get away from guys too. He's just such a unique player. He says, I don't think you can really replace him. We're just going to have to build our offense a little bit differently because we don't have that available to us. But Deebo's a hell of a football player. I've loved being his teammate. I love sharing the field with him. I love going to war with him. If that's it, that's what happens, he gets traded, I'll be very sad. But at the same time, I'm always happy for a guy to get opportunities, and that's all you can ask for in the NFL. What a fucking teammate. Like, I know a lot of people hate Deebo at this point, and they're tired of him. George Kittle's an all-timer teammate, man. Like, I would love to have George Kittle as my teammate because he's, regardless of how all this went down, regardless of the the downfall of Debo Samuel, regardless of how, poorly he's played. Debo still is a guy that George Kittle sees as, man, he's so good. And he is a damn talented player. We saw when he was at the peak of his career in 2021, it was like, wow, what can this guy not do? Like, he did it all. And I said it earlier, he needs a fresh start. I think Debo needs to go to another team where he can be motivated, hungry, and prove himself. Because I don't think he's going to do that with the Niners. He knows what he could do here. He knows that he could, carry this offense if he absolutely had to. But at the same time, the injuries have gotten to him. He is not the top option on this offense. Brandon Ayuk took his role, in terms of spot in the offense. And, Juwan Jennings took that top wide receiver spot last year with the injuries. So I feel like it's definitely the best for him to go. But I do agree with Kittle. When Debo's on and he's, at his best of his game, when he's healthy, he's everything. He's a yak monster. He can break tackles. He can run, with the speed. He can break away from defenders. He was a fun player to watch when he was at his peak. So, good for Kittle. He's definitely a hell of a teammate, man. You can't hate on Kittle. Like, he's an all-timer, and I really hope they figure out his contract situation to extend him. I'm sure they will, because this guy needs to retire as a 49er. If I ever see George Kittle in another jersey other than a red and gold 49er jersey, I will be absolutely sick to my stomach. This guy is one of the greatest 49ers I've ever had the pleasure of watching. So media says 49ers a QB award. What a casual. It shouldn't be just quarterback award. Let's take a look. Jake says Christian McCaffrey was the missing piece, but the O-line was just missing. Facts. I agree. O-line was bad. My man Throwback says, so glad Aaron Banks won't be back anymore. Yeah, he's probably not back. I think he had a decent 2 years, but he just never reached that potential. He was a second-round pick. Never was a Pro Bowler. He did get hurt a lot this past season, even his first season. Aaron Banks was a guy that was just up and down with injuries, and he never reached that full potential that I thought he could have been. So, yeah, Aaron Banks, he's probably gone this offseason. Raj, the 49ers should go after Nick Bolton. If Dre Greenlaw isn't back, definitely a great player on the Chiefs. I don't know if 49ers will be able to, throw the money at him. I feel like if they can afford Nick Bolton, they should be able to afford Dre Greenlaw. But I get it. Dre Greenlaw might want to go to the Commanders or another team to be a top flight linebacker one somewhere, be his own Fred Warner. But at the same time, I'm sure he would love to play next to Dre. But there's so many conflicting reports about Dre Greenlaw. Will the 49ers be able to bring him back? I know we talked about the more cap space, right? There's more cap space, so maybe they'll be able to afford Dre. But, man, I know Robert Salah wants him back. But honestly, I don't know if the 49ers want to take the risk. Now, I know people hate this take because everybody's an injury risk. But Dre Greenlaw definitely coming back from a major injury. He had lingering calf issues before that injury. That's tough, man. I love Dre, and I would hate to see him go to another team and then he's fully healthy. It's like, damn, they should have signed him. Because he changes this defense. He's a game changer. He's a tone setter. He is a dog, man. He is an absolute monster at linebacker. It's hard to replace a guy like Dre Greenlaw. I know there's good linebackers. It's easier to replace a linebacker, but Dre's one of one, man. Him and Fred Warner are like two dogs. It was like Bowman and Willis. Those two guys were head and shoulders above everybody else. And I feel like Greenlaw and Warner are head and shoulders above most linebackers in the NFL. So it would be tough to lose them. They lost Azeez Al-Shaair, a couple years back. It was tough losing him, but good thing they had Dre Greenlaw. So there was no fall off. I mean, Greenlaw to me was probably better than Azeez Al-Shaair when he left, right? So it's tough. I feel like they may not be able to retain Dre for a multitude of reasons. But if they don't, hey, I wouldn't hate Nick Bolton. I think he'd be a solid replacement. He'd be a lot better than a Devondre Campbell. I mean, that was at that point last year, it was like what's the word I'm looking for? Is desperation. They were desperate. They needed a linebacker. They were like, shit, our young guys are still young and developing. They're not ready to replace Dre Greenlaw. And then it was like, we need a veteran. And they were, jaded. Devondre Campbell was fool's gold. And that did not work out. So please, if they don't get Dre Greenlaw, I hope they don't fall into another Devondre Campbell type situation because he was a sucker ass player. They can't get another guy like that. You just can't get another horrible type player like Devondre Campbell. So my man Rob says even Debo can't be Debo anymore. He might not be. He might never be the same. he might never ever be the same player that he was, which we've seen in the last couple of years. He's fallen on off. He's washed up a little bit with 49ers, but I think if he goes to another team, he might find that passion for at least 1 year and have a better year. I mean, you can't be worse than he was last year. Last year was bad. He got pneumonia, and he got a lot of other banged up injuries. I feel like if he goes to another team for at least 1 year, I think he'll be like motivated to prove him, I'm Debo, aha, I'll laugh in your face. And he'll throw it back. He'll have some tweets like, I told you to keep that same energy. I could already see it. I could already see his social media posts. They tell me I was done. They told me I was washed. Look at me now. Look at me now. It's like a 2-touchdown type game, right? And I could see Debo post, oh, they said I was done. They said I was washed. They said I was fat. Look at me now. I could already see the Debo like future tweets. I could already see him in my mind. I could predict it. I could predict it. It's so predictable. But for 1 season, and after that, he'll fall off again because he'll get paid, prove himself, and then fall back to reality. So I don't know. But he's never going to be the same he was as 2021. 2021 might need to be studied. Like how good that damn season was. No, it's crazy. If it wasn't for Cooper Kupp, this guy probably would have, had even. It was crazy because he kind of got overshadowed by Cooper Kupp that year. Cooper Kupp, Triple Crown, right? And it was amazing though. Those two guys were going back and forth all year. AJ, yeah, Debo can take his drama elsewhere. He will. AJ says, I'm not tired of Debo, and he will be missed. I don't understand what happened to him, and I don't understand the hate he gets. Niners will miss Debo. I think some people will miss him. I think the Niner, players are going to miss him. Obviously, George Kittle says he's going to, miss him, and I'm sure there's other players on the roster that feel the same. And he will be a guy that's missed in the locker room. He's a big vocal, guy in the locker room. He talks a lot. He backs up his teammates. He's one of the guys that people look up to, especially in the wide receiver room. I know Ricky Pearsall, he posted many times. He had a lot of interviews where he specifically singled out Debo for helping him out and mentoring him, and Jacob Cowing the same. And I know Brandon Ayuk through the years. So, yeah, I know the fans have kind of soured on him, but he definitely will be a missed guy in the locker room. Now, I think the reason to answer your question, why do people hate him? Just because he's talked a lot, he didn't back it up, he got paid a lot, and he didn't live up to those expectations. There was a game last year where the week before he says, I'm not struggling. They need to feature me more. I need the ball in my hands. He basically said, throw me the damn ball, right? Like Keyshawn Johnson many moons ago. He said, look, throw me the damn ball. And they threw Debo the damn ball. And guess what? He didn't catch it. And then you go choke out your teammate. And I feel like all those things kind of built up. And it got to the point where Niner fans were like, all right, I'm fed up because he talks a lot and he didn't back it up last year, which – Niner fans have every right to be upset at him. And Debo has every right to be upset at the fans because they did turn on him. They calling him fat. They calling him washed. They calling him this. They calling him that. That's why I think both sides, it's a bad toxic relationship. And you can't be in a bad toxic relationship. You need to part your ways, get a divorce, and be civil. And go find another partner. That's it. Bottom line. That's what happens. So. My man Rick says, too much podcast and not enough on the field production. I think that's another big take because a lot of people say this. A lot of players nowadays, they want to build their brand. They want to build their, portfolio in terms of, media analysis, whatever. So they go on these shows, they go on podcasts, they make their own podcasts. And I don't know. Sometimes it's cool. Sometimes it's like, all right, you need to focus on the game. But you're right. And I think a lot of people slam that. And, 20, 30 years ago, no players were on an in-season podcast. It's great. You don't talk about the opponent. Like Amon St. Brown. This man had Debo Samuel on his podcast the week they were playing a game. It's like, come on, man. Why are you with the ops on a podcast? So, I mean, the way that media has changed the game in all sports, it's crazy. So I do agree with that. It's just like, I get it. You want to talk. You want to say your piece because people are going to talk trash about you all week. So as a player, you're like, I want to say what I got to say because people are going to say X, Y, and Z about me. I want to respond to. At the end of the day, who cares what you got to say? Go defend yourself on the field. Just let your game do the talking for you. Because, again, 20 years ago, players would let their game do the talking for you. Now they actually let their talking do the talking for them, which I feel like it does affect a player. Because sometimes you're not thinking about a game. You're thinking about the quote you want to say. You're thinking about the social media post you want to post. You're thinking about the clap back you want to put. You're thinking about the dance you want to do after. you're thinking about everything except being locked into the game. And I feel like the social media has changed sports, sometimes for the better, but a lot of times for the worse in certain aspects. So, yeah, good comment. I like that. I think you're right. I think so. Less talking on a podcast, more preparing for the game. I know Fred Warner has a podcast. And George Kittle's in the media a lot. He goes on Pat McAfee show. A lot of players, they like to go on these podcasts, man. Some of them are able to do it, and but not a lot of them. It's not like, I feel like it's hard to maintain, a sports podcast and then be ready for the game. Like, I get it. Like, you're just talking, you're just having an off day, because they all have an off day, and that's usually when they do it, but which is typically Tuesday. But I don't know. It's a little weird because I feel like a lot of players are just focused on, okay, I got to get this quote. I got to do this for my show. It is, part of their contract is doing media, but then when they have their own shows, it's a whole different entity of media. It's stuff that's not obligated, but then they make it an obligation. So it adds more on them. I mean, they already have a lot on their plate, and then you add that, it's more, on their plate. And then people are going to roast you when you have a show. People are going to be like, yo, focus on the game. I don't care about your podcast. But, I feel like Debo's podcast compared to other players, because I've watched a lot of players have a podcast. Debo's show is just not, it didn't hit good. It just didn't. I was like, he was better when he was the guest on Kay Adams. When he was on the Up and Adams show and he was just like a weekly guest, I feel like that was better than his Bleacher Report. I just didn't like the format. I just like, it seemed sometimes it was like forced. It was like he was forced to talk about certain things, and he didn't give a shit. And sometimes, like, certain players, having them talk for a long time, like, they just didn't have a lot to say, or it was just like a redundancy or a lot of repeated words, or like, I don't know, Debo, sometimes he would just say like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, okay, yeah, but yeah, for sure. Yeah, you know what I mean? And then he really wouldn't say a lot of anything. So I don't know. Maybe he just didn't need a podcast. Some players are really good at speaking. Like Fred Warner's podcast is a little weird sometimes because he's with his wife, and sometimes she'll say some like off the wall, like things that don't deal with football, but whatever. It appeals to both sexes. Sometimes the women like to talk and hear those things and those opinions, but I don't know, sometimes Fred Warner, I'm like, I don't know what the hell you're saying, man. But there's certain players, they're great at speaking. Like, because I saw Fred Warner on NFL Today, in the playoffs, he was doing his analysis thing, and I was like, damn, Fred Warner was I was like, man, this guy's going to be a great analyst one day. Like, I could see him talking, after he hangs it up and being an analyst on NFL, network or something. But then that podcast is like, it's like weird because he's just talking with his wife. It's like, oh, how's the family? Oh, yeah, we dressed up as Elmo for Christmas or for Halloween. Is like, okay, who cares? But when he was on the show, NFL show, and he's breaking down film, and he was like talking about D'Amico, I was like, oh, this guy knows ball. So it just depends on the presentation of the show. So yeah, there's a lot of drama. There's a lot of drama on some of those. Like Fred Warner, I don't know. Sometimes that shows they talk about some drama. I don't know. Debo's too much. Just be like Marshawn Lynch. I'm just here not to get fined. Yeah, he was different, man. Leon said he's the guest on his own show. Debo, he's the guest on his own. How's he the special guest? Because that girl's there. I can't remember her name. And then she's like, oh, with my guest. I remember one time she recognized him, or she introduced him as, oh, our guest, Debo Samuel on the Debo Samuel show. I was like, wait, what? Oh, man. AJ says, do you think limited to no podcast should be included in their contract? I mean, you can't tell a person not to go and have a podcast, with sports media. But I feel like, I don't know. It's just weird. I feel like players they should shy away from it. But they get paid a lot of money. I'm sure they get paid. And all these guys want to get paid, and, they build their brand up. I mean, I get why they do it. They want to build their brand up. I can't tell a player, no, you shouldn't do a podcast. You should limit it. They should put it in your contract. Because that's silly, because we all have freedom of speech. We should be able to say what we got to say. You should be able to talk if you're a player. And again, it's a whole new landscape. It's 2025. Sports media and social media and sports in general is a lot different than it was in 2005. So, yeah, it's annoying to us, but I wouldn't say we should limit it. But, some players should just shy away from it. I don't know. But some people love to talk, so. Debo is awkward as well as BA. You either have personality or not. Yeah, I don't know. Brandon Ayuk on a podcast, that would be no bueno. He just doesn't talk a lot. Like I watched his vlogs on his YouTube. He's talked more on that than I've ever heard him in front of the media. I mean, because he's just talking with his friends and he's just being himself. But man, when he's in front of the media, Brandon Ayuk doesn't say much. He's a little weird though. But hey, it is what it is. But in any case, that's pretty much the news for today. Let's see. Did George Kittle say anything else of note? That was a good topic, with George Kittle and everything else. Oh yeah. So that was the George Kittle. One more story of the day that we'll talk about, and this is a story we got to keep our eyes on, right? Because the Jaguars, they've had interviews with several candidates for their GM position. And today they had an in-person meeting with 49ers director of scouting and personnel, Josh Williams. They had an in-person interview with him, and they had an in-person interview with Ian Cunningham for the general manager position. So they had 2 in-person meetings. They broke it down to 5 candidates. It's kind of crazy that they have 5 candidates as GM. They're really trying to make sure they get the right guy, because last time they had Trent Baalke and that was bad. So they have Ian Cunningham, James Gladstone, John Eric Sullivan, Ethan Waugh, and Josh Williams. Those are their 5 candidates. And as you know, Josh Williams is the candidate from the 49ers, and he's been the player personnel director, scouting personnel director for several years. And if he goes to the Jaguars and becomes the GM, obviously it'd be a promotion for him, and he'd become the GM for the Jaguars. The 49ers, as we know, would get 2 draft picks, 2 compensatory draft picks. They'd get a 3rd-round pick for consecutive seasons. So I think Niner fans, they're saying, okay, we don't want to lose anybody, but if we're going to, it's great because they get a compensatory pick. But then if you lose Josh Williams, and you got to figure out who you're going to replace him with in the front office in terms of who's going to be your player personnel director of player scouting and personnel. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting. I wish Josh Williams good luck, because if he gets the job, the 49ers, they get 2 draft picks. So BA thinks he's in need for speed. Yeah, that boy was speeding and he got pulled over. But the cop, did you guys see that video where the cop pulls him over and he thought he stole the Jeep Grand Cherokee? And he's like, oh, we got to check. Bro was going 55 miles in a 53 or something like that. He's only going a few miles over speed limit. It definitely was profiled. Felt bad for the guy. We need those picks. They would be for next year. Yeah, we wouldn't really get to do anything with them this year, but they'd lock in for 2026 and 2027. So you have 2 future 3rd-round picks. Fred Warner was a 3rd-round pick, to put it in perspective. So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully the Jaguars get their job figured out, their GM position figured out. I'm guessing from what I heard, and then my assumption is Monday is when they'd probably have everything set, next Monday, maybe by Friday, because next week is the NFL the NFL Combine. So I believe next Thursday. So I'm sure teams would need a GM before you go to the Combine to have a plan and everything, right? Because you're not going to go to the Combine without your GM representing your team. So I feel like the Jaguars are going to be pretty close in getting this hire situated. I would guess in the next few days, maybe by Friday, maybe by Monday at the latest, because they need to have a GM if they're going to be going to the Combine, right? So I'm sure this decision will be done pretty soon. Did I see the number plate on the car? Didn't it say like stolen? Stolen? Oh, man. My man Throwback says Dominic Pooney was ranked top 100 according to the PFF. Yeah, good for him. He was ranked the number 100th player in the NFL. That's good for a rookie. He was a damn good gem. I'm excited to see how much better Dominic Pooney gets moving into the 2nd year. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Any other questions or concerns? Let's take a minute here, see if there's any more big questions, but I think that's pretty much it. As you know, make sure you hit that like button if you want to follow the content, RSF 49ers Live here on YouTube. If you don't know where else I'm at, which crazy, if you're following me here, I'm sure you do, but RSF 49ers on Instagram, on Twitter or X and on TikTok. So appreciate you guys for all the support. Make sure you hit that like button. If there's any more updates or any more news tidbits that come out, we'll for sure post them and get them out, and we'll definitely talk about it. So hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Happy Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your week. And go Niners. Peace.